All right, let's chat all about some news in NWSL. Let's start with what's most recent because, of course, once Attacking Third goes live, there has to be breaking news. We've got breaking news out of Kansas City Current. We'll be reacting to it live here. They make the announcement that midfielder and veteran NWSL player, Canadian international and free agent Desiree Scott has announced that she's re-signing and staying in Kansas City. Will remain the Current's captain. Look, let's just react to it right now on the show. Lisa, are we going to see Kansas City in 8-1? They have got like
I know.
plentiful amounts of midfielders. What are your first reactions to the resign?
Yeah, I think my first reaction is we're either gonna see 6 or 7 in the midfield for Kansas City, where we're gonna see some players out of position because not only do they have so many midfielders on their roster, I haven't even had time to count up how many of them there are. Morgan Gautrat, Ketel Fava has been playing in the midfield most recently, Desiree Scott, Lola Bonta, Sam Ewis, Vanessa DiBernardo, um,
Alex
Alex
Alex Herrera, like
Alex Fuera has been pushed
the list
higher,
goes on and
uh,
on and on.
playing Dabinia, they've also got in their midfield. So because of how stacked they are in the midfield, I am so curious to see if we see players out of position or quote, not out of position, but like trying different things, or if we see a different formation from Matt Potter about how to utilize all these central players. I mean, Desiree Scott was a free agent, and she's obviously been a free agent for a handful of months now. And she was one that maybe wasn't at the top of our most watched list to start the free agency period. It was Dabinia for us, you and
Yeah.
me here at Attacking Third. And
Mhm.
then when we kind of saw Kansas City make all these trades for players like Morgan Gautrat and Vanessa DiBernardo, midfielders out of Chicago Red Stars, we were like, okay, interesting. Desiree Scott is still a free agent. What's going to happen here? Then most recently, we see Dabinia, the free agent midfielder, signing with Kansas City. And we're like,
Mhm.
okay, they've just gotten 3 brand new midfielders that in addition to the ones that they already have, like, what does this look like for Desiree Scott? Where does she fit into this? How does she kind of fold into it? Because they did lose Kristen Edmonds, who did play more defensively, but I think alongside Desiree Scott, those two, um, I think that maybe I was like, okay, was Desiree Scott going to drop into the defense a little bit? Like, what's going to happen here? And now it's official. Desiree Scott has re-signed with Kansas City. The captain is staying in KC. I don't know what formation we're gonna see from Matt Potter. I'm gonna be really honest here. I don't know,
Yeah.
like a 3-6, I don't know.
I can't wait to see it. I guess I'll say that. I'm
3-6-1?
with you I'm with you in terms of the reactions. Look, I'll even throw in another one. I'll say I'm a little surprised. I
Yeah,
just sort of felt like with the off season that Kansas City has had to date, and that includes uh the free agency period, the trades, the draft, including all
mhm.
that. Um, I didn't know if Desiree Scott it was in the plans for Kansas City Current. I'm like, wow, like well maybe there's something happening in other in other areas where
Yeah,
we witnessed so many players in this free agency period exercise their free agency, and many of them have made moves. I think it's that's something that we're going to walk away with in this free agency period, where there were more players who exercised their free agency than those
right.
who directly signed with or re-signed with their clubs.
Yeah,
Maybe once it's like official, like the season actually kicks off and we go down the list, and maybe it'll shake out that it was a little more even. But I think at this point, I think there's a few more who exercise the right to sort of re-sign in other clubs. So because of that, I'm a little surprised. In a number of ways, just because, like I said, because of the moves that they made, I didn't know or see if this was really something where it's like, okay, they still had this particular player in their bigger picture,
yeah.
in their plans for next season. And at this point in free agency, if you're looking at like who are maybe some of your kind of ready available midfielders, that would be Desiree Scott would be a player that other teams would really try
Yeah.
to wrangle onto their own rosters. But something very cool that we've heard coming out of free agency as players have made these decisions to sign with new clubs, a lot of them talking about the things that matter to them. And what we've heard with Kansas City, we've heard constantly about the environment. We've heard constantly about the facilities that are available to them. The player first sort of mentality, the fact that they're coming off of a championship finals appearance, that is very important to these people. We heard Davinia talking about that, Morgan Gautrat, Vanessa DiBernardo, etc. These are all players on this free agency list that have at minimum, right, 6 years of playing time within the league. So these are veteran players. These are players in much different in their careers. So I would anticipate that, making sure that you're on a team that can contend for titles is probably pretty high on the list at that point in your career. So congratulations to Karen on nabbing another midfielder to their roster, not just any old midfielder. I mean, we're talking about Dessi Scott, someone who's had a pretty prolific career at this point in NWSL, but also internationally. She's been a force for Canada's national team, has been with the Canadian national team since she was like 16. So, multiple Olympic medalist coming off of the gold medal in the Tokyo Games. So I'm curious to see how it will play out. I would imagine that if all goes well and she remains healthy and informed, that she's a player that Beth Priestman in Canada will be taking to a World Cup. So, perhaps there's a little bit of a conversation about what her role is for club this season.
I think it's interesting, though, to kind of put out there that congrats Kansas City, because I agree with them. As Dessi Scott is a free agent, I imagine she had plenty of other offers because she is a veteran. She is a versatile player. She can play in that defensive six. She can run a midfield. She's got a lot of experience doing it for domestically in the NWSL. And as you said, for Canadian women's national team, she won gold, right? Like, this is a player that has so much experience, and any team would be lucky to get her. But I think it speaks a lot to what Kansas City is building in KC right now. The fact that they've got all these great facilities. And I'm just like curious what those conversations were, whether it was with Davinia or with Dessi Scott, as to kind of how these players fit onto the roster. And maybe with someone like a Davinia, you say like, hey, you're going to fit on here. If you come here, we'll find a spot for you. Like, you're going to run this midfield. But how do you have those conversations then with someone like a Dessi Scott? I just, as a player in free agency, that's one thing you have to look at a roster and say, hey, where do I fit into this? And it's a little full. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen there for Kansas City in their midfield.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like come opening day for NWSL. Yeah, lots of movement. If you're North Carolina Courage. They also made they made it official. They made the official announcement of their assistant coaches. I thought this was kind of funny to sort of see the release come out, but Fabrice Gautrat named as a full-time assistant coach, and this all coming out after the draft, when he was very clearly at the draft, like at the draft table, like making the shits a little backwards. But shout out to all the clubs that were like in a fury to get out those press releases that they had so many assistant coaches, because so many of them were going to be at the draft. For example, like Ella Masser with Chicago, or Scott Parkinson with the Reign. But here's Gautrat. That release obviously got put on the back burner a little bit, but he's officially in an assistant coaching role with the Courage. But Angel City also making the announcement that they've got Melissa Phillips from London City Lionesses as a new first assistant coach. So a lot of movement, a lot of new coaching assistant coaches into the mix for certain clubs. Racing Louisville participating in that trade with North Carolina, but also making the announcement that they have extended goalkeeper Katie Lunn through 2025.
Yeah, I think a huge grab for Racing Louisville to secure Katie Lund. This is a player that was put under fire last year, put in front of a brick wall and said, fend for yourself at times. And I think Lund did an exceptional job in 2022 with kind of everything that was thrown at her between the sticks. She ended the year last year, 2022, as with the league record of 112 saves in a season. And you and I talked about it on here. Like, that is fantastic for Katie Lund. She had 6 clean sheets. She started every single regular season match for Racing Louisville, but Racing Louisville's defense was also pretty weak last year. So Katie Lund was put under bullet fire a lot last year. This is a huge grab to kind of secure a player like Katie Lund through 2025, shore up that back line, have a little bit of consistency in goal, as she was their goalkeeper last year. And now adding some players like Abby Urseg, Carson Pickett in front of that back line. Paige Monahan, we could see her play across the back line for Racing Louisville as well. Jalen Howe, Savannah DeMello in the midfield. Racing Louisville they're coming out of this offseason with a little bit of strength that they've got across their back line. But with re-signings and everything that comes, there's always a bit of some sad news, or bittersweet news, I should say, when
Yeah.
players announce their retirement. Darian Jenkins, forward, most recently with Orlando Pride, has announced her retirement. A tremendous career for Jenkins in the NWSL, bounced around at a couple different clubs, and now saying that she's out, she's finished with the NWSL, and she's going to continue on with her life. Really happy for Jenkins and everything she's done, and best of luck to her in what's next for her.
I will just say on the news of before I thoughts on Jenkins, but before saying that with
Mhm.
Katie Lund, I think it was a great signing. Love the clean sheets that she got. Um, but I think the fact that she had so many saves and she had so many clean sheets, I think sort of also like symbolizes that Racing had some struggles on defense. It's a very curious stat for a goalkeeper. I think when they have so many saves in a season, you have to ask like what's happening in your midfield, and then by extension, what's
Oh,
happening
yeah.
on your back line. But I think it's a smart decision to sort of lock up your goalkeeper for the next few seasons. So I love that for them, and I'm really interested to see now what that's going to look like for Katie Lund now that she's going to have that type of support and somebody like an Abby Ursig in front of her as well. So already making some moves for Louisville in that defense, and we'll see what that looks like in 2023. And I'm with you in terms of the reaction to Darian Jenkins and making her exit from playing professionally. It's always sad. I think when
Mhm.
there's a layer of sadness that comes with that when you hear players making their retirement, because so often in the women's game we see these retirements come at ages that you maybe wouldn't see on the men's side of the game.
Right.
Darian Jenkins announcing this at the age of 28. She had just joined the Pride in 2022. I think sort of unfortunately kind of closing out the season with a little bit of a lingering injury, and through her career unfortunately wasn't a stranger to that. I mean, she mentions that in her farewell statement, and saying that that she made the decision to hang up her boots, and she's really proud of herself for how much she overcame in every phase of her career. But Darian Jenkins really sort of becoming very quickly in this league when she got drafted, essentially what was a bit of a journeywoman throughout this
Yeah.
league, having played with a number of teams before closing out her career with Orlando Pride. And I think about her, and I think about the type of player she is, and what it could have looked like maybe without some injuries, but what she has meant to multiple rosters in the past across this league. And when you think about the NWSL and sort of this next era, this next decade that they're looking towards, and trying to take that next step forward, so many of these rosters are built upon players like a Darian Jenkins.
Yes.
So yes, you've got your really big international players that are going to get headlines, whether that's United States Women's National Team players, or even Canadian internationals, or Brazilian internationals, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But your players that are coming from just making that leap from playing collegiate league, going pro, getting drafted in NWSL, and just trying their best to navigate their careers in the past decade in this league, I would anticipate was pretty tough at times. So I'm someone who's very, very grateful for the careers and the players like a Darian Jenkins. And there's plenty more calibers of players like her across the league, and will eventually have to make those types of decisions of their own for retirement. But we loved having her on the show. It was great to
Yeah.
chat with her on A3 ahead of that 2022 season with the Pride. Definitely, you all should go check it out if you get the chance. If you want to just relive Darian Jenkins' time in NWSL, check it out if you can. But best wishes to her. Definitely has said that she wants to have a role still within the game of soccer, but maybe it'll just look different. It'll be off the pitch, right? So we'll see what's next for the great Darian Jenkins. But that is going to be a wrap for us today